Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next in our series of portfolio presentations. I titled this Portfolio Power Hour. So this is, we're going to dive into what are common pitfalls in portfolio creation. So some feedback, some fixes, no redesign required. If you're wondering whether your portfolio is good enough, you're in the right space. Observing is just as valuable as sharing. And so typically this is a live event and students go ahead and share their portfolios and we offer feedback to one another. I would really encourage you to join a live event as I think that is really valuable. But if you're not able to, this recording should help you as you're creating your portfolio along with your course studies. So what we're going to talk about today is what recruiters actually scan for, some common portfolio gaps in communications and UXD portfolios. We usually break off into some groups and do some live portfolio reviews. And then I give you just a little checklist of fixes that you can apply tonight. I like to send you off with action steps so that this information is something that you can apply right away to your portfolio. Okay, if there is a little camera icon in the corner, that is a clue that this might be something that you want to take a screenshot of. So the recruiter's quick scan checklist, 30 seconds. Recruiters spend very little time per project. If it's confusing in 30 seconds, they move on. So this is why strong summaries and framing are critical. So some things that you want to ask yourself. Overall clarity. Can I quickly understand what you do? This is what recruiters are asking. They're going to look at your project titles and summaries. Make sure that they're clear. They're very easy to find. It's very organized. Problem framing. What problem are you solving? They want to see more than a gallery. They want to see how you solved a particular problem and what your process was through that. Outcomes and impact. If you have measurables that you can include in this section, that's huge. I'm going to show you some examples that if you don't have metrics that you can use, how you can still show your impact. And then, of course, your writing quality. Make sure that your grammar, your readability, your tone, all of that is very professional. In this series, we talk about the basics, the font you use, the color you choose, the white space that you include, whether it's left aligned, centered, all of those things. We talk about those basics. So if you haven't seen portfolio number 1 in this series, go back and watch that. But we're going to continue on and just show what some of the gaps might be. Okay, so here is a portfolio homepage. You may notice there are very clear titles. There are thumbnails. There are short project summaries. Everything feels very organized, simple, easy to find. She did a really great job of just showing a little snippet of what that project might be, and you can click on it for more information. Here are areas that the recruiter's eyes likely go first. They're going to look at the project names, the roles, short bullet points. They rarely read deeply on the first pass. If the problem, your role, and the outcome aren't immediately visible, they'll skim right past. So a quick scan often determines if a portfolio gets a second look. So here's another example. These thumbnails show a range of project visuals that are clean, inviting, and professional. Exactly the kind of thing that draws the eye on a portfolio homepage. So I don't know if this is surprising to you to see how simple it is laid out, but this is what recruiters are looking for, something that they can easily see what you're about. There is a link that I would normally put in the chat if this was a live event. At the end, I will give you my email address, and if you would like an email with all of the resources that we refer to during this event, I will send that to you. But I'm going to show you some examples from this particular blog of some great designer portfolio examples. And so again, email me. I will send you the resource links at the end. Here are some more examples from that particular website. So I'm going to go back one, see how different everybody's are. Everybody's portfolio are going to be completely unique to them. It's your creative work. It's not going to look like anyone else's. So hopefully this gives you some ideas how you might want to structure yours. No two are going to look the same. Okay, so some examples. Clear versus confusing. So I am going to show you some examples of portfolio cards. One is messy, unstructured, and then the other one is clean and very easy to read. So here is an example, confusing, a project title that just says app design. That's it. Description says worked on multiple features across the app. You have to put more. So here's a clear way to say that. Project title, redesigned onboarding flow for new users. That's a much more descriptive way to say you created an app. Description, improved first-time user completion by 30% by simplifying steps and adding tool tips. This really shows in a second what your outcome was, what your role was, what your process was. So it doesn't have to be long, but you want it to be descriptive. Okay, so some things to think about, your layout, your branding, your colors, your typography, your iconography, I'm sure I said that wrong, your strategy, your user personas or what your role was, your structure, your wireframes, your usability testing. Think about all of those things as you're creating your portfolio cards. Here's another example. Again, if you want to take a screenshot of this, what recruiters actually scan. Here are some things. They look at your project thumbnail image. Does it convey the type of work that you did? So you want a very clear image, something that draws your eye, not something that is confusing. If you look at it, you're like, what are they trying to show there? Your project title, just like we just talked about, clear and descriptive. Problem statement, we're going to get into that. What challenge was addressed? Your role, who did what? And then your outcome or metrics, what changed or improved. All right, so we're going to dive into each of these things. So here is an annotated screenshot of a sample portfolio. So we've got the project image, we've got the problem statement, we've got your role, and you can just put that, my role, and in this particular case, you're the UX designer, and then the outcome. And if you have measurable outcomes that you can put in there, any metrics, that is so beneficial. If not, there are some other options. And then, of course, the title, which we already talked about that. Okay, problem statement elements. So your problem statement is not just what you worked on, it's what problem you solved. You want to use a structured problem statement. It increases clarity in the first glance. You can apply this to titles and summaries on portfolio slides. So this kind of breaks it down, what you can include in that problem statement. Here's a sample one. So for a business project, problem statement. With the introduction of our latest software update, while many features were enhanced, we have observed a 12% decline in user activity during the first hour of usage. Very specific. This is suggestive of a potential usability or interface challenge that might be hindering the user experience, especially to those familiar with the previous version. It's very specific what the problem statement is, and it doesn't try to solve it yet. So that's also important. Just state what the problem is. Okay, so some quick tips for 30-second success. Titles, we've talked about this a lot. Make them specific and descriptive. Summaries, use 1 to 2 sentence max. Include the problem, include your role, include the outcome. Images, choose one thumbnail that shows the type of work clearly. They can always click into it and see more about that project, but you want one image at the beginning. And then metrics, include measurable results whenever possible. So look at your homepage and just ask, or your first slide, can a recruiter understand what I do in 30 seconds? If you cannot explain it in 30 seconds, you need to simplify. So I want you to just think about what project in your portfolio that's there now could be understood by a recruiter or a potential client in 30 seconds, and which one might confuse someone. Which one needs a little more clarity? Here's an example. On the left, before. The thumbnail is not great. It's very blurry. It shows three different it looks like it's probably some phone screens. And so it's showing three different views of the app. And it just says Project 1, various design tasks, used Figma. Not very descriptive at all, and it doesn't draw someone in. After, here's how they improved it. The title says Redesigned Onboarding for New Users. It explains your role. My role was the UX designer, has the problem statement and the process there, simplified onboarding flow, increasing completion rate by 30% for first-time users. Put the metrics in there. They even highlighted a little bit lower there, 30% more completions, reduced confusion, user feedback improved. So really quickly, a recruiter can see what your outcome was. And then there's a thumbnail there. So simple, but effective. All right, here are some common pitfalls for both communications and UXD. Your portfolio is not a scrapbook. It's a case for how you think. So you need to think of it that way. You want to show your processes. You want to show the thinking behind why you made certain decisions. It's different than just showing your work. You're showing your thinking and your impact. Typically right here, I would put in the chat two different links for you to go to, one for communication students and one for UXD students. And so we would refer to those as we go through these examples. I have also pulled examples to look at so you can follow along with me. Again, I will send these to you at the end if you send me an email. So communications portfolios, here are common problems. They focus too much on the artifacts. They skip the strategy and the audience, and they undersell the impact. Here are some common problems for UXD portfolios. They over-index on process screenshots. They explain their tools, but not their decisions, and they forget the storytelling element of that. So we're going to look at some examples. These first two examples are for communication students. So I put the reminder in the right-hand corner there. The portfolios focus too much on artifacts, skip strategy and audience, undersell impact. This is actually a really great example of a portfolio for a communication students. It's super content driven. She has free blog posts, a newsletter, and a course that all helps her build credibility in her marketing skill sets. Her navigation bar also has everything she does clearly labeled, making it easy to work with her or get her expert training. With the wide range of content available on her site, her portfolio is a great example to look up if you plan on becoming a freelancer or a creator in the marketing space. One thing she does really well is she does not skip her strategy or her audience. She kept that in mind as she created her portfolio. Next example. Okay, this is a copywriter who specializes in helping companies grow through SEO. This is a marketing portfolio page. It's a perfect example of how to sell your own skills and services by showing over telling. Not only does his portfolio site explain who he is, it also ranks many different copyright service related keywords, so his target audience can find him through SEO. On his site, you'll see an about page, a dedicated contact page, and a review about his services. He includes several different professional reviews. He also has a copywriting course, which makes him look like an authority in his space. You'll see down at the bottom, he has all of the different companies he's worked with. So one thing he does really well is he does not undersell his impact. It is right there in front of you what his impact is and why you would want to work with him. All right, moving on to UXD. So again, I put the common pitfalls in the corner. This is a good example of a UXD portfolio though, but just to remind you what the pitfalls are. So Phil, he is a designer at Chipotle. He created a dark portfolio with minimal content outside of his projects. He really lets his projects shine. Again, I will send you the link to this so that you can click into his portfolio and see all of his different pages. This is the beginning page. But this is a really smart way to shift your focus to the case studies, where you can see more of his design through embedded Figma prototypes and screenshots. When it comes to showcasing screens, like Phil does in some of his projects, the built-in device mockups come extremely handy. With this feature, all you have to do is choose a device, mobile, laptop, desktop, tablet, or browser, pick a style for it, whether it's realistic, stylized, outline, etc., and then upload your screens. One thing he does well is not over-index on process screenshots. Here's another completely different feel of a UXD portfolio. The best word to describe her portfolio is probably cozy. There's something about a beige color palette that's immediately comforting. So she went with this vibe and she carried it all the way through. This vibe is further strengthened by her portrait, which shows her with a beautiful, welcoming style. It matches very well. The only time you should feature your portrait as prominently on your homepage as she does is if you have a professional portrait that matches the color palette of your portfolio. Otherwise, it might look tacky or like a resume, and that's not ideal for a designer. The rest of her portfolio is also exemplary. If you can click into her portfolio, you will see how she ties her case study thumbnails together by using matching soft gradients for the backgrounds. One thing she does really well is to tell her story. So that's a common pitfall for UXD portfolios, is to forget the storytelling, but she definitely does not. All right, so let's just review. Strong portfolio components, a clear problem statement, a defined audience or user. Think about who's going to be looking at your portfolio. Your role, make it very explicit, not implied. State it exactly. Your decisions, your trade-offs, if you had to pivot, what that looked like, and then your outcomes or lessons learned. Here's a common gap, vague problem statements. Here's a weak example. Designed an app to improve user experience. Here's a strong redefining of that problem statement. Redesigned onboarding to reduce confusion for first-time users who were abandoning setup. They didn't use a lot of words. They made it simple, but it also is very descriptive. So think about one of your projects where you could rewrite the problem statement. Add who, why, what wasn't working to give context and impact. Here's another common gap. Too much what and not enough why. So here are some examples of weak language. I created blank. I used Figma. I added blank. Some stronger ways to word this. I chose blank because show your thinking behind your decision making. Based on feedback, I changed this. That shows that you're flexible, you're willing to pivot, and you're keeping in mind your audience and what the final outcome should be. This decision reduced blank. Use metrics, use outcomes to show what the final result was. This why communicates critical thinking. So frame your decisions as intentional. Common gap number 3 is no outcomes. Examples of outcomes could be feedback received. If you don't have metrics, some qualitative feedback will work in this case. What improved? What lessons did you learn? And then what are your next steps? So even if your results weren't perfect, recruiters really value that reflection. So if you can show that learning occurred, it shows that you have some professional maturity as you work through this. Okay, typically here is where we break off into groups and we look at some portfolios. We spend a few minutes looking and giving feedback to one another. We show what's working, what we might suggest for improvements. Obviously, we can't do that in this space. If you can attend one of my live events, please do so. I think that's incredibly valuable to be able to do this, but hopefully you are coming away with some tips through this recorded version as well. Case studies. At this point, I drop in the chat some different examples of case studies. You want to show your process, not just your output. So as a student, a lot of times what we say is that if your assignment includes a template, that is a clue to you that this is something to include in your portfolio. You are supposed to be building your portfolio alongside your coursework all the way through until you graduate. A lot of your assignments are designed to help build that at the same time, so you're not duplicating your efforts. However, you're not just taking that template and pasting it into your portfolio. That probably would not make a lot of sense to a potential client or to a future employer. So in the third series, or the third in this series of portfolio presentations, I talk about exactly how to take those assignments and turn them into case studies. So I would encourage you to move along in this portfolio series and check that out. But I will just give you some tips about this for right now. Show your process, not just your output. Employers and clients want to see how you think and not just what you made. A case study lets you highlight your problem solving, your research, and your decision making. Number 2, demonstrate your impact. Include metrics if you have them. Include your outcomes, user feedback if possible. Very, very valuable. Example, redesign the onboarding flow, reducing drop-off by 25%. There's a measurable. Number 3, tell a story. People remember stories better than static work samples. And a narrative helps the reviewer understand your role, your challenges, your contributions. Number 4, differentiate yourself. Many portfolios show screenshots or final deliverables. You can make your portfolio look beautiful with the design choices that you make. That may not be enough to make you stand out. So what can you do to differentiate yourself? Case studies. Case studies, case studies. They communicate depth, strategy, and thought leadership, things that set you apart. And then highlight your collaboration and skills. UX and communications work is rarely solo. So if you worked with another student, if you worked with another company, if you worked on a group project, show that. Case studies let you show teamwork, client communication, or cross-functional collaboration, which is very valuable to a future employer. How do you include case studies? Select the right projects. Choose 2 to 5 projects that showcase diverse skills. Think about the beginning of your portfolio and what that looks like. And have you put your best foot forward? Have you selected 2 to 5 projects that are diverse, that show different types of decision making or skill building along the way? Research strategy, UX design, writing, visual communication. Use a clear structure. I think that it is very important that everything follows the same type of template. When we looked at those examples earlier of those different portfolios, they kept it very clean, where every project card basically followed the same structure with the title, the summary, the role, and the outcome. Obviously, each project was completely different, and so the thumbnail is going to look different, and as somebody clicks into that, they're going to see how that project is different. But it was really easy to see what they worked on because it followed that same clear structure. So some things to think about: your context or challenge. What was the problem or goal? Your role and responsibility. What was your specific contribution? Your process and approach. Research, ideation, wireframes, prototyping, testing. What was your approach in that? Your outcome and results. Metrics, feedback, lessons learned. And then your visuals and artifacts. Screenshots, diagrams, snippet of content. Number 3, focus on the storytelling. Number 4, keep it scannable. Include visuals to break up text. We talked in the portfolio series about white space and how many characters should be on each line and what type of font. So you want it easy to read. Highlight your key points with bold text or call outs. You can label things. You can use bullet points. Those are so much easier for people to read quickly than it is a big block of text. And then tailor it for the audience. For UXD, emphasize your research, your wireframes, your prototypes, your usability testing. If you're a communications major, highlight your messaging strategy, your campaign performance, your audience impact, and creative problem solving. Think about who is going to be looking at your portfolio. And then we would look at some different case studies here. Again, if you have time to look at number 3 in this series, I really break down how to take your assignments and turn them into some impactful case studies in your portfolio. Here is a little checklist of things that you might think about. Just some things that are simple fixes for your portfolio, possibly. Think about one project summary that you have, and does it clearly show the problem, your role, the decision, and the outcome? Is there something in your portfolio that you could rewrite tonight that could be a little bit more clear? And then add 1 or 2 sentences explaining why you made a key choice. Not just used Figma, but really explain the thinking behind the process. Remove unnecessary explanations. If it does not contribute in some of these ways that we've talked about in the last half hour, does it need to be there? Maybe it does, but maybe it's just extra fluff that could be taken out, and then it would be more clear for someone to be able to see what you were working on. Tighten your language. Academic writing is always short and concise. So I put shorter is greater than smarter. So think about that too. Academically, you want to come across as very professional, and so concise language is always more preferred. Question and answers. I'll put my email at the end. If there is anything that you have questions about, I'm happy to address those. How many projects do I need? That is up to you. Your first look at your portfolio, your first page should really highlight 2 to 5. You can include more than that, but make sure your 2 to 5 that are really strong are at the beginning. Is it okay to include schoolwork? Absolutely. This shows what you're learning, what you're working on. And if you have not had a chance to be participating in any experiential learning type of activities, whether that's an internship, volunteer, some of the simulations. If you have not done any of those things yet, which I highly recommend for your portfolio, your coursework is where you show what you can do. So turn them into case studies. And then what if my project failed? That's still valuable. You can still show what you're learning and what your outcome was and what you might do differently in the future. Just want to leave you with this. Your portfolio is a story. It's not a gallery. Clarity beats complexity, and reflection beats perfection. So I have so many examples of some portfolios that I can send you that I will be happy to do. And if you have any questions, please reach out. If you can attend a live event, definitely do that. But thank you for joining me today. And I hope that you came away with some valuable advice and tips that you can apply to your own portfolio. Thank you. Bye.